Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays. Joining me today, it's my good friend Nate Tice. Nate, how you doing, buddy?
Doing very well. Today, I learned that baby dentists are a thing. I mean, it makes sense why they need them, but I just realized, it's another thing that gets added to the appointment list. So,
but how do they need them? Because the health of those teeth doesn't seem that important.
It's more about the gums, I believe.
I guess that makes sense.
And it's the introduction to make sure it's not a very scary thing. So I finished a baby dentist appointment, open up the video, and I want to order a large farva right now. I want to order. For anyone that can't see,
for those of you listening,
Robert's rocking a monster mustache right now, and I love it. I love it. Not Movember for my dear Robert. It's Mapril for Robert.
Right. So I will very quickly address this in terms of how we arrived at this moment. I haven't had a beard for a while. It had been a while since I'd actually grown a beard. So there was no way to get to this intermediate step of having the mustache without having the beard first. So I had the beard, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this. Because I'm just curious about how it's going to go.
Yeah.
And I did. And my wife liked it. So soon as I got the stamp of approval where she's like, if you keep some of the stubble plus the mustache, in her mind, I've reached an age. I'm 36 going on 37 now. Like I'm like a man. Mm-hmm. I'm not like a 24-year-old kid who has a mustache because it's funny. So I've reached a point where this is just like a grown man's facial hair. So I'm allowed to have it. Which that's all I needed. And as soon as I got the go ahead from her, I'm going to stick with it for a while because I actually do like it.
At least people noticed yours. I grew mine for 6 weeks. Not a single person said anything online or in person. So I just shaved it with no fanfare, nothing. I was just like, all right, I guess I'm shaving that. So at least people noticed yours.
The distance between yours is thinner, and I think the distance between yours and the beard is it's going to be hard to notice.
I'm patchy.
I'm sorry.
I know I grew the beard originally because I grew jowls when I was with the Falcons.
That was my move.
I was very large. That's when everyone started asking me, you used to play tackle, right? Or you used to play D end? I was like, no, I was a quarterback. And that's when I was like, all right, let's start hiking 3 hours a day. And so I grew the beard. It's been a long journey trying to fill out that beard. But yeah, it's a little wispy. It's always wispy and raggedy. Great start to the show today. Talk about
I'm going to keep this for a while. The moment where I might take it off is for our live draft show that is happening in Detroit about 3 weeks from now. Finally able to let it rip and tell people about that. It is official. We are doing a live draft show from Detroit. Same way we have over the last 2 years. Me, you, Dane Brugler, some special guests. We're going to be going live for the first round of the draft on Thursday, breaking down every single pick, reacting to every single pick. Same deal on Friday for the second and third rounds. Same sort of schedule that we followed last year from Kansas City. Really, really excited to be on site where the draft is happening again and doing all that with you and Dane. One of my favorite things that we do every single year. And just wanted to get it on people's radars as soon as possible now that it's official. We will be doing it again about 3 weeks from now, live from Detroit, Michigan.
And it's going to rock. And it's a good one. So that's why you're growing out the mustache. It's for Tom Selleck. So that's what it is, Magnum PI, because he always wore the Detroit hat, right? That's perfect. There, we nailed it. That's the connection.
I have to decide how professional or unprofessional it is because this is a big moment. This is a big visual moment. When it's half podcast, half YouTube, I can kind of get away with it. But for the draft show, I think that I'm probably going to have to make a decision. Yeah,
and I know it's going to be a good studio setup because I could tell Alex is super fired up about the studio setup. So can't wait. Alex Sample, who does.
We're hoping to keep building. If for you guys that remember, for you guys that've been with us for a while, our first draft show that we did was me and Nate with 2 iPhones from a room at the Courtyard by Marriott on Dearborn Street in Chicago. If you want to go back and you started pick 10. If you want to go back and find the visuals of that, you can. They are available on YouTube. Let's just say that incrementally the quality has improved over the last couple of years, and we are hoping that will continue this year. We're going to have some fun bells and whistles, still working on those right now, but just, again, wanted to get it on your guys' radar as soon as possible that is happening live from Detroit, night 1 and night 2 of the draft. Let's dig into some of the considerations on night 1 of the draft. For those of you who have followed the last couple of these shows, we're continuing with our mock draft scenarios from round 1. Last week, we did picks, it was 26 through 19. right?
Sounds about
Those were
right.
them, something
Sounds about
around there,
right.
25 through
Sounds about
19. It
It's
doesn't
definitely
really
through
matter.
19. It's definitely
The
through 19.
important
Yeah.
part is we're
20.
starting with pick 18 today, and
Yes.
that is the Cincinnati Bengals. If you guys haven't listened to the previous iterations of the show, we're really just going through every single pick in the first round, breaking down team needs, which players might be available, just talking through the process that you would follow if you were doing a mock draft.
Mhm.
So that's what we're going to start off with today. And let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals, a roster that is in pretty darn good shape when you actually take a step back and look at it. What were your first couple needs as you were looking at where the Bengals sit right now?
They went from one of my easiest teams to mock draft for, to one of a little bit more difficult as free agency went
Damn
along. And they
you,
just
Trent
kind
Brown.
I know they just kept adding little singles and doubles everywhere, like even like a Sheldon Rankins. I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that took away that glaring need at defensive tackle. But it really came to what I think the Bengals it comes to is bridging this year with the next couple of years, maybe post T Higgins, paying Joe Burrow, paying Jamar Chase. And really just the offensive line because it's kind of some mercenaries, some of the guys to kind of build around. It's this weird kind of makeshift. It's a good roster. It's just a makeshift as far as timelines, which isn't the worst thing in the world. So when I first looked at it, it was offensive line, and that's more of a splurge. That's like a tackle of the future to try to bridge it this year to the future
Sure.
years. Same with receiver slash Brock Bowers as a Tyler Boyd replacement because
Yeah.
Bowers is a slot player and that's just they want to reconfigure it, but they haven't done that. They're an 11 personnel team, but who knows? And then the other was defensive tackle or defensive line, I put in general. Those were the spots that kind of came to me, but it wasn't like where I was like, automatic, that's the spot. It's more trying to find an argument for each one in a good way, I would say.
Those are the four that I had, and that is the exact order that I had them in. So
Even
we are
Bowers,
very
even
we
Bowers.
are so I had tight end. I had just
Oh,
tight
okay.
end in
Oh yeah, that
general.
counts.
But yeah, but I
Pass
think
catcher.
the
Yeah.
reason I put tight end on there was because I think that now we're getting into a range where it's worth mentioning Brock Bowers. Like
It
if he
is.
were to fall to the Bengals, it would make a ton of sense for them
Mhm.
to take Brock Bowers, really for the reason that you just said. Beyond their need at tight end, they have a need for a slot receiver within this offense right now. They just don't have one. They signed Mike Gesicki to a 1-year, $2.5 million deal. Tanner Hudson is on a 1-year deal, and Drew Sample signed a 3-year contract this offseason. Almost none of it is guaranteed. So there's nothing about their current tight end room, even if it includes 3 guys, that should stop them from taking Brock Bowers if he's available right here and he falls that far. So I
Right.
had that. Offensive line, I had offensive tackle slash offensive line. I think even after signing Trent Brown, he's on a 1-year deal. And
That's it.
they
Yeah.
could also improve if they wanted to do a guard to tackle kind of apprenticeship
Transition
program. They
band.
could
Yeah.
also do
Yes.
that potentially in the
Yeah.
same way a lot of those teams in the 20s that we discussed could look at because
That,
Ted Karras is in the final year of his deal. So, and if they wanted to go
yeah.
center, like a back at center, and then I don't think Cordell Volson is preventing you from upgrading at left guard if you ultimately wanted to do that. So, a bunch of different options along the offensive line, I think, are right. If they wanted to go tackle, because Trent Brown's only on a 1-year deal,
Mhm.
no issue with that. And receivers, the same thing. If they wanted to draft somebody that would be a T. Higgins replacement down the
Mhm.
line, they wanted to draft somebody that was more of a slot player. Chase spent about 25% of his snaps in the slot last year, which was the highest percentage of his career. So if they wanted to use him more inside this year, find a guy that could switch off with him, just the way they built that room. So those are the 3 spots that I had. But I'm with you because this team is hard to pin down because they've mostly spent their early draft capital over the last couple of years on succession plans. They've had
Mhm.
orders at each position, whether it's Miles Murphy, DJ Turner. I mean, the high picks that they've spent have been plans for the future. And I think the current state of their roster sets up well for that.
It does. And that's why, again, it was just so hard for me to go, oh, they easily, absolutely knew this. The offensive line one's the one I keep coming back to because it just feels like that's just what the Bengals was always like. Well, I had the offensive line, keep Burrow up, keep him upright and everything. But it's for me, it's going, well, which one? Because it's like, do you want? I think the succession plan from guard to tackle is a great one. But then it's like, all right, so are we going to go next year? We're going to try and find some new center, some new interior guys. So like this is where I'm sorry, Troy Fatanu from Washington. I have to reconfigure my name pronunciation from the past year as I've learned his actual name because him to me is like the ideal fit here because he can play. I think he can play all 5 spots
Mm-hmm.
and play them well. So that's why, and again, I keep coming back to these versatile guys. I think that's so good when these teams have 1.5 kind of openings, maybe 2 openings. Well, we'll figure it out and get that best 5. So receiver wise, the guys that are in this kind of range are Brian Thomas from LSU, AD Mitchell from Texas, who's kind of rising. But those guys are more outside only types.
Yeah.
and which is more of a T. Higgins replacement. AD Mitchell will be a more one-to-one. Brian Thomas is kind of his own thing. He's kind of a Z route runner type that's in a 6'4" body. He's his own thing. I like him, but
We're going to
he's
talk about him this week.
yeah,
We're going to talk about the pass catchers with Dane. I find him to be a really intriguing player. His
yes, he's
skill
getting
set and the way that
stereotyped.
he moves, where he lands is going to be one of the things I'm paying most attention to in the
Yes.
first round of this year's draft, and how high he goes.
How high he goes, because he's one where I hope his situation's good, where he can get brought along a little bit, where he doesn't have to be the guy right away, but then I think he can be the guy down the road. He's just he's his own thing. He's like, I've been trying to pinpoint an exact comparison for him, but all the guys that I come to are like 4 inches shorter.
Yeah.
It's just he's his own thing. So, but that's why if they want to get a different flavor, okay, we have a ball winner. Jamar Chase is this undersized. He's Charles Barkley, who can dunk on guys. That's what he is, and so he can do that. So technically, we don't need another one-to-one ball winner. It's nice with T. Higgins and be able to do that. So I think they have some openings there, some pathways there if they want to add some pedigree to that spot. Just kind of keep the good times going in the passing game.
We've talked about the offensive line a lot over the first two
Yes.
shows that we did. I mean, so many teams in the back half of the first round could use an offensive tackle or an offensive lineman.
Mhm.
But for the most part, we've been sticking to names that you probably throw in like the second or third tier. Kingsley Suamatia from BYU, Jordan Morgan from Arizona, even guys that are interior players first, whether that be Graham Barton or some of the other guys that we've thrown around a bunch. I think as we get into this range with the Bengals and then above, that's when we can, I think, start talking about the top tier of offensive tackles in this year's draft. And there have been like 7 names that I think people have thrown around in this general tier. And if I'm listing them off, it would be Fashanu from Penn State, Joe Alt, JC Latham from Alabama, Fontenot, Amarius Mims from Georgia, Fuaga from Oregon State, and Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. I know you're a little bit lower on him, but I think Dane had him at like 18th on his big board. So if that's kind of like the upper echelon and a half of tackles, I think the Bengals are a good place to start because I wanted to do this exercise. How many teams ahead of the Bengals at 18 do we think have a screaming need for offensive tackle and would likely draft one if one of those guys was there?
Okay.
I had 5 teams that I threw out that I thought had like a glaring need on the offensive line.
And we're going all the way to pick one?
Could potentially go there in the top 15. I'll just list them off because it's unfair to ask you. I had the
think I got
Chargers at 5.
Yeah.
The Titans at 7.
Yeah.
The Jets at 10. The Raiders, even though you could maybe argue they need a guard more than a tackle, but Thayer Munford is a 7th round pick who started half the games for them last year. They could easily draft a tackle in the first round. And the Saints are the 5 teams where I was like, I think tackle arguably is 1 or 2 on their needs list. So
you said Titans. You said Titans too.
I said Titans.
Yeah.
So
and then
those 5.
they're on the Patriots, but they're at pick 3.
In the Patriots, if they don't draft a quarterback,
that'd be the only other one I'd
potentially.
add,
And then, so I think there's a couple that are maybe on the fringe. Maybe the Raiders, if you wanted to say guard is more important. The Broncos, the Broncos are such a weird team, and we'll get to them. You could easily argue they're starting over. So if you think a tackle is the best player, just take one. Garrett Bowles is in the final year of his deal. And the other team out there is the Bears. If the Bears wanted to trade down and go tackle. But even if you want to put those fringe teams on there, that's still only like 8 teams. And if there's 7 guys, one of these guys that we were like, they won't fall all the way to 26 could end up being there for the Bengals. So I think that's where this kind of top tier and a half of tackles, this is the range where we can really start talking about them because there's so many that even teams with needs at that position, we're still going to have a surplus of guys available by the time you get to the 15, 16, 17 to 18th pick.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it makes sense. We're in the top 20 range. So now we're getting into true first round graded guys. I have Barton and probably Fuaga switched. I have Fuaga as like my top non-blue chip guy. He's just like, I just can't get around on him, but I still think he's a good prospect that should go in the first round. I'm just not as high as other people are. And I know I'm higher on Barton than others, but that's okay. So that's 7. And so now, and then that's before, again, like you said, those second, third tier guys. And that's why I kept bringing up those guys. Cause I was like, all right, I see all these other guys going in the teens or before. So that's why we're now, like, I'm just agreeing with you.
That's kind of why I wanted to like make a point of separation here as we get into this range of the draft.
And like Fatanu, I have as my 10th player on my big board. And just because I think he can do so much well, and he has the size traits and the athleticism traits, but we're like I said, we're now in the top 20. So even if I am 10th, technically a first round grade usually goes to top 19, top 20. So this is kind of his range. And again, you're going to get into flavor, you're going to get into team need. And really, this stretch is going to be interesting because there's going to be some team needs that we get to that's like, well, I like this for this team and not for this team. And again, usually in a draft, there's only like 2 or 3 first round ish offensive tackle prospects. And or Peter Skoronski last year, I had him more as a green chip kind of guy, like as a where I have, how I have Fuaga right now. But he went where to the Titans? He went top
11.
12, 11. Okay. I have Barton,
Think.
who's they've been kind of compared as similar players. I think Barton's a much better player, and he might go way later than that in this draft. So again, this is just about, sorry, 3, 2, 1. It's all about supply and demand. And that's what we have right now with offensive line. We have a decent amount of supply, which is usually we never have. So it's going to be funky how this all kind of drops out, even if it doesn't match the big board. I think it's going to be really cool where these guys end up too.
The other guy I'd throw out that we've mentioned a little bit, but I think we're getting closer to that range. And you mentioned defensive tackle as a potential need for them in a succession plan would be Byron Murphy from Texas.
Yes.
BJ Hill is in the final year of his deal. So even after signing Sheldon Rankins to that pretty decent contract for Sheldon Rankins, good for him. I still think you could argue that based on the way this team has drafted in the past, it wouldn't be a surprise to see them fortify that position group a little bit.
Yeah.
Last thing worth mentioning, they have an extra 3rd round comp pick for Jesse Bates. So as they're trying to build depth at some of these positions, just worth remembering that they've got an extra pick in the 90s there to maybe hit on. We need another corner. Our succession plans at corner have already taken place. Now the depth that we had with a DJ Turner last year, Awuzie is gone. I know he was hurt for most of last season, but they still had built-in redundancies at a lot of their secondary positions that, especially at corner, are not necessarily there anymore. So as they need to build depth at that spot, offensive line, etc., they've got some mid-round picks to potentially do that.
Running back. Get him a running back.
Yes. That's also an argument, right?
Like spot that, like a 3rd round running back. They're in a juicy spot for it.
I personally do not support that because of my Chase Brown dynasty football fantasy share.
I was like, wait a second.
I do not support that solely
first round.
For my personal interests. I do not support them taking a running back. I would rather have the Thunder and Lightning, Zach Moss, Chase Brown duo just be what they roll with for the next 2 years. But that's just me. All right, let's get to the Jags at 17. I know we've talked about the Jags a lot during this draft and their potential needs. Where would you start? I'm curious, what is the first need that you would say for the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Oh, it's corner. It's starting corner.
I was wondering whether you'd go corner or receiver, and I think corner is probably a better answer.
The real answer is corner. Like that the actual team answer is corner. That's the head answer. The heart answer is fucking receiver. I don't care if I swear right now. I'm going to say it again. I know. I'm sorry. I haven't dropped an F-bomb in a while. I've said other swear words, but I'll drop the F-bomb there. Actually, I go about one a show. But no, I'd say corner. And they're right in the prime spot to take maybe the first corner off the board, maybe the second corner off the board. But they're in this range where the corners will start kind of get picked off. Terry and Arnold from Alabama. I'm curious
because I think there are a couple teams ahead of them that you could make an argument. The Raiders need one. Yes. The Broncos could take one. So for the Jags, I think we hope more quarterbacks go. We have this more quarterbacks. Oh, the Broncos love Bo Nix and they're willing to trade back for Bo Nix. Great. The Raiders want to trade up, for whoever it happens to be. Great. So for them, I think specifically what's happening at 12, 13, 14 at corner is definitely worth watching.
They're a great example. And this is where the frustration sets in of that for this year, they need corner, but for team building, they still need offensive line. They still need a receiver. And that's what I look at their offensive line. You can't build a long-term future around Mitch Morse and Brandon Scherf. That's 2 spots. I mean, they have Cleveland because he's the best of a bad bunch at left guard. That's really 3 spots I think they need upgrading from next year. Not saying this year, but this is what team building is all about. And that's what you're supposed to do. But that's where
the nice part is they do have mid-round picks. They have an extra 3rd because they got a comp pick for Jawan Taylor. They got an extra 4th because the Saints traded for Jake Haener in last year's draft. So there are spots. Oh, we're going to talk about the Saints later. We're going to talk about the mystery of where the Saints do and do not have draft picks a little bit later. But the Jags specifically have an extra 3rd and an extra 4th. So if they wanted to take some shots on depth at interior offensive line, for example, they have the capital to potentially do that.
That's it. And that they just need pieces. They have so much that it's more just like, let's get on base with some of these guys. Let's not keep wasting day 2 picks. And that's what I felt they've done maybe the last 2 years, especially on offense. And so, yeah, and they're not going to take a receiver because Trent Baalke doesn't take receivers. This is not his philosophy. It just won't happen. No GM is invested less in receivers than Trent Baalke, as far as through the draft, I should say. So
I
that's
agree
why
with you that corner is the biggest need. If they don't spend like a pick on a receiver in the top 100 picks,
that's
I'll
it.
lose my mind.
Yeah, they
If
need
you're
it.
just going to roll into the season with Gabe Davis, Zay Jones, and Christian Kirk, I know that Evan Ingram is whatever. He's probably a receiver too. But if
Yeah.
that's your group in a season like this, where you're the last year of Trevor Lawrence's rookie deal,
the
like
deepest receiver class that we've had in a couple of years.
I would be very frustrated if they just ignored it again in the draft in the same way they've done over the last couple of years.
I know. I'm just ready for a sour reaction on draft day with them. But they're set up okay to at least take what they do need, but they set up also where they have needs, and that's the Jaguars. Again, that's where we're at with them.
Corner, I'm with you. They signed Ronald Darby to a 2-year, $8 million deal with $5.5 million guaranteed. It's an interesting section of corner contracts in the NFL. It's a lot of guys who signed them this year. And here's how I would describe this. We'll play you if we have to.
Okay.
That's this range of cornerback contracts.
The warm body contract.
Let me list off the names because it's so perfect. These guys all signed for about that amount in AAV this offseason. Ronald Darby, Jeff Okudah with the Texans, Amik Robertson with the Lions, Shaq Griffin with the Vikings, Dane Jackson with the Panthers. All of them signed in this exact range, and they're like the only players in the NFL with cornerback contracts in this range. Everyone else is either lower than this or on a rookie deal or, making $8 to $10 million a year. So that's all you need to know is that is a replaceable player at cornerback.
What's the AAV?
It's like $4.5 to $5 million.
So like the replaceable guard is $6 million. Okay. So now we're figuring out these kind of like warm body contract. So there's different tiers. There's the elite tier. There's the good starter tier. This is the warm body tier. I like that a lot. That's funny.
So if you have the warm body contract, it does not stop you from taking a corner in the first round. And I think that's exactly what the Ronald Darby deal
actually
is.
Not bad team building. It's
what you should do.
That's what you should do. You sign just a decent starter or someone that can hold the fort, and then you replenish for this year and the whole term of the rookie contract. It's not just for this year. It's for year 2, year 3, year 4. That's how you build depth and talent. This is the succession plans you're trying to do.
Corner is even more glaring of a need if Darnell Savage does not end up playing in the slot. But by all accounts, it sounds like that's what they signed him to do. So if that's the case, if he's going to be there,
hit me up about that at all.
If he's going to be their slot corner, then safety becomes a need. So one of the two, they either need a nickel corner or a safety, depending on where Savage is going to play. So they signed him to a more than warm body contract. So wherever he slots in, they need another starter in the secondary. But I'm with you. I think it's secondary, corner specifically, wide receiver after that. They so far, I think that they could probably use a little bit more depth on the interior, the offensive and defensive line. But Eric Armstead is the type of piece that I was hoping that they would bring in for the last 2 off seasons. He's an interior player in the way that Arden Key was not, but a complementary pass rusher is just something I thought they were really missing last year. So to be able to have Armstead inside on defined passing downs when you have Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker, that's nice. And I'm with you. I mean, they just need depth in the interior of the offensive line. They still have Luke Fortner at center, but guard, they could use some redundancies there. So those are probably the 4 spots that I would throw out for Jacksonville.
Yeah. No, that's what I was going to say. No, the Eric Armstead one is, it's like, okay, that one's fine. But okay, I'm not going to get on you with that. It's like so funny. Some of these random ones they do, that's not very random. They kind of splurge a little bit on it, but they need that so badly because 1, he helps on passing downs. 2, he helps in the run game. Even if he's 90% of what he was, still a good player, still loads better. This is if you go from crap to average, this is going from crap to good. That's several tiers better. So even if he's not to what he was, he's still such a good starter and something they needed so badly. So I'm glad you mentioned Armstead because I haven't gotten to kind of give some, flowers to that side.
Yeah, we really haven't hit on that at all because it was a little bit later. It was in
I made my joke.
Free agency.
I've made my jokes, but I actually did like this move by the Jaguars.
Any other potential players that you did not throw out? We talked about a couple of the corners, a couple of the receivers. Any other potential fits that you think would make sense for Jacksonville in this range?
I was not going to do it, but Cooper DeJean. But you gave me the floor. So, but he does. You just mentioned safety, corner, whatever, not slot, because we were saying with the Savage stuff. But with Nielsen's defense, the Jean Savage types get unlocked a little bit. those kind of safety slot types that can play that, they get unlocked.
CJ Gardner Johnson.
CJ Gardner Johnson's a great example because of the blitzing, because of the use of what they like to kind of mix and match those guys based on blitz, based on man matchups when they get into that. So DeJean's actually a pretty decent fit there in Jacksonville.
Trying to think of what corners did you mention that could be in range here?
Terran Arnold. Again, it's the flavor you want. So my top two corners are Terran Arnold and Quinion Mitchell. Arnold from Bama, Quinion Mitchell from Toledo, and then Cooper DeJean. And then, but then you get Nate Wiggins, who's an outside only corner. He's got some twitch to him. Yep, from Clemson. But I don't know if he has the size that Nielsen or Balky likes. And then Kool-Aid McKinstry. Balky definitely favors kind of pedigree schools. Like he definitely has a, kind of a little thing if you got coached by Nick Saban. So you got to throw in Kool-Aid McKinstry in there as well, because just his feistiness and everything, he's got some size. So that's another one, even if I'm a little lower on him.
Again, we mentioned they have an extra third-round comp pick in the Juwan Taylor signing, and then they got that fourth from the New Orleans and the Jay Cater deal. So just nice to have picks in your back pockets when you're lacking depth at certain position groups. And I think that the Jags, that certainly applies for them. Let's get to the Seattle Seahawks at 16. Where did you start with the Seahawks needs heading into the 2024 draft?
The interior offensive line again.
It's the first place to start. There's no question,
because you just look at what they have and you're because in my head, and this is a discussion we had last summer. I was like, I really like Charles Cross and I really like Abe Lucas, and then you brought up the interior, and I was like, well, they invested a little bit in it. I've seen it. They need more investment in the interior just to help it. They need juice in there. There's plenty of guys in this range that are perfect. You can listen to this show, last show, the show before, all the guys I can talk about, but one of those offensive linemen that can play in the interior. Then if you want to look defense, it's a gap shooting defensive tackle, because they have so many plugger types, but they've spent a lot of resources on these guys. So it's like, do they want to just keep pumping it? Not sure. Again, there's a new regime as far as head coach and everything. What does he prioritize? So, but like Byron Murphy was a guy I did like matching here to Seattle. But as I've gotten away, I've really tilted to more interior offensive line because of the fits like Barton, Fatanu. And Fatanu has a background with their new offensive coordinator. So that's another kind of like guy that I can see mixing and matching, kind of perfect range, fit, background. That's a guy I really have started growing to as a fit here.
I also think you mentioned Graham Barton on a bunch of these other shows. If he's still around in this range, all those interior guys that we've mentioned, Jackson Powers Johnson, I think this is a prime spot. I think if you ask them, they would say interior offensive line is probably their biggest need. John Schneider's openly talked about them needing to add bodies to that position group after losing Damian Lewis, and then even independent of Damian Lewis at those other two spots. I think you could make an argument that nothing about the way that Olawatimi played last year, Anthony Bradford, should stop them if they want to upgrade at one of those positions. So that is the first place that I would start. And you mentioned not even the offensive coordinator. Scott Huff is their new offensive line coach. He came from Washington.
Is he Washington's line coach?
Yes.
Okay.
So he was Washington's line coach.
Like what he was doing. I like what he was doing. So I'm okay. So I usually get a little hesitant with the college to pro jump for line coaches. But if of the guys I watch, and this is just offhand, I know nothing about him, nothing about background. What I've seen on film, I like it because the rules were pro-like, it makes the translation a little bit easier than other offenses.
So if they like that, they like Fontenot, there's obviously a ton of familiarity there.
That makes a lot of sense now.
Defensive tackle, I get where you're coming from, because I do think that skill set is necessary, but I think you could literally throw out any position on defense. Yep. Because we don't know how they view this group, and a lot of the signings that they made at positions where they had some attrition, they're stopgap signings. The only guy they signed to a multi-year starting level contract defensively this offseason was Rayshawn Jenkins. That's it. Tyrell Dodson's on a 1-year deal. Jerome Baker's on a 1-year deal. And so you could go linebacker if you wanted to. It's in the first couple rounds. You could go into your defensive lineman in the first couple rounds. I think you could go safety in the first couple rounds if you wanted to. Even with Julian Love there and Rayshawn Jenkins on that contract. I think Kayvon Wallace, they also signed this offseason, but that's a stopgap deal. And then corner. I mean, who knows what they think of their corners? You still got Mike Jackson at that other outside spot. Do they want to upgrade at one of those outside corner positions? So when you have a new defensive-minded head coach come in, and I don't think there are a lot of like rock solid, we can't replace this guy, anything to me is on the table. And that's kind of how I feel about the Seahawks defense.
And what's so hard with McDonald is that I feel like when I watched his defense, it was so much going like, okay, this is what I got. I'm going to make it work.
It's going to be again.
It never felt like, I watched Jim Schwartz and it was like, well, of course, like Okoronkwo makes total sense for what he likes. Get in the wide nine and rush that freaking passer. Oh, physical. Even though he didn't handpick these guys, those guys all kind of made sense for his fit in defense. With McDonald, I'm kind of like, it seemed to me he was just like, all right, I got Clowney, Matabike. All right. All right. How am I going to do this? All right. Matabike, shoot the gap. Yeah. Clowney, push the pot. Like that's why we both liked him. And a lot of people liked him is he used everyone really well. He highlighted their strengths and limited their weaknesses, which is what good coaches do.
I think you could make an argument that every single member of the Ravens defense had the best season of his career last year.
Yeah. Even Humphrey had a great year.
Maybe Darby and a couple of the aging corners didn't.
But Humphrey had a good
and
year.
then Marcus Williams and Humphrey was hurt. So I think
yeah,
the fact that he was banged up,
he still played well.
I still think he played well. So maybe like
Yeah.
independent of like the aging defensive backs, probably on the back half of their career, everyone on the upslope of their career. But that doesn't even apply to Clowney. Clowney had the best season of his career last year. So it like 90% of the Ravens defensive players had career years last year because they were utilized in the correct
majority.
way.
An easy majority did. Yeah. But it makes it for this exercise so hard. It's like John Schneider's there, but guess what? And none of the old Legion of Boom defensive guys are there. Like, so I can't really pinpoint that. So I'm as interested in anybody what the Seahawks do. I mean, obviously just the head coach stuff, but I just want to, like you said, I want to know what they are prioritizing, what they think of their guys, because it's such a different roster. It's such a unique roster.
I feel the exact same way about the defense specifically. Like, I just can't wait to see how they build it, who they try to build it through, what it ends up looking like because of that.
Sorry. I know they're kind of stopgappy, but I am actually interested in that safety pairing because Julian Love and Rayshawn Jenkins are both versatile and they're both smart. And so I'm just curious. I don't think they're going to be elite, but with McDonald, and you got Spoon in the slot. That's kind of an interesting. I want to see the funkiness he kind of brings with those guys because they're all smart and aware kind of players.
I think they're more excited about that group than people on the outside are in terms of how they've built that safety room compared to what it looked like last year.
Good, because that's how I feel. I was looking at him really. Julian Love's a really smart player and he's versatile. So I don't know. I think McDonald's going to like that. I'm interested in it. I definitely am.
Last one I want to throw out here positionally. Got to mention quarterback somewhere along the way here, right?
Yeah.
I like Geno. I am a pro Geno. I have a pro Geno stance. I love watching Geno play. I think you can win with Geno Smith, but he's 34 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He has a $38 million cap hit next year in his age 35 season. So, and they can move on from him. I think it's $13 million in dead money if they were to move on from Geno after this year.
Remember, Pete was his biggest ally. Pete Carroll was his biggest ally.
We're in a new era here. New offensive coach, new coaching staff, new decision makers. So even if I am a Geno supporter on this side of things, I think you have to mention quarterback. And the one thing that's funny here, they don't have a second round pick. So even if they wanted to wait until the second round and pick off a Penix or a Nix or whoever falls, they don't have one. This is true of a lot of teams in this range. The Seahawks don't have a second round pick. The Broncos don't have a second round pick, and the Vikings don't have a second round pick. So all of these teams that are quarterback needy, quote unquote, that maybe can't get into the top of the draft to draft a guy, they also don't have a second round pick. So just something to keep in mind as you're trying to figure out where some of these guys land.
Yeah. Derek Carr is not knocking down that door. He's not coming through that door. There's no second rounder savior coming through that door. No Jimmy G's of the world.
For the Vikings, it's because they have 20.
Had to move up.
So if they're
playing a different game.
They're in a position where, like, if they wait until the second wave, they're well positioned to draft that guy before anyone else can because they have a second first round pick. And I honestly think that was part of their thinking. But with the Seahawks specifically, I think if you just looked at it in a vacuum, if they had all their picks, be like, oh, Penix in the second round, wouldn't that make sense? If he falls that far, you got the offensive coordinator. It makes total sense. But because they don't have one, I think it kind of changes the calculus of where they might be able to draft the quarterback.
This is way, way too rich for Penix in my estimation. But yeah, no, that's a great call. And last year, I know they liked Anthony Richardson a lot. So it wasn't like this is not on their mind at all, like of having that succession plan. It's not like they're just go, oh, we'll figure it out. So just, it is a possibility.
If you look at their draft capital and just overall situation, they do not have a second because of the Leonard Williams trade last year. They moved from the third to the fourth because of the Sam Howell trade. So they do not have a third round pick that's theirs. And then they have an extra third round pick because the Broncos traded up for Riley Moss.
I couldn't remember if it was Marvin Mims or Riley Moss because I was like, oh, Mims, I understand. Like, whatever. It's got some juice. I don't know how many snaps Riley Moss played last year. It wasn't a lot.
I don't know if I'm allowed to use this word in this context, but the draft pick trades in this range are very incestuous. There's a lot of teams that are just trading with each other. So the Broncos, the Seahawks, and the Saints are all going to be involved in the same sequence of draft trades and trying to figure out where their picks exist.
And notice where they finished. No man's land. Right here in the teens. Not where you want to be.
You don't say.
How many snaps do you think Riley Moss played last year? He played 14 games. Defensive snaps.
30.
23. But 30 was actually a great guess because I would have gone like 90, 100, 23 snaps.
And you traded a future third-round pick to move up for him. And we're going to get to the Broncos in a second. I think corner is still one of the most glaring needs on their entire roster. I don't want to spoil the Broncos conversation because
I don't either.
I have so many thoughts.
I know you're getting into it. A couple of like even the Saints conversation. I was like, oh, hold on.
Well, there's going to be a lot of ground to tread when we end up getting there.
Yeah.
Let's go to 15 here and the Indianapolis Colts. Where does your list of needs start for the Colts as we head to the 2024 draft?
Cornerback is the one that stands out to me. Even if I like Brents and everything, you just look at who they have invested there. For me, also, they were kind of a little difficult for me because my first thought was like, oh, pass catcher. Because even if I like Pierce, I know what he is now. They've invested in Dobbs. They just paid Pittman. So that got me off of receiver. But doing Mina Kimes' show, she brought up Brock Bowers. And I was like, oh, didn't even think about that one. Who likes tight ends? Shane Steichen. And they kind of, Ogletree, who they're interested in, is no longer on the roster for reasons we won't get into here. Jelani Woods is coming back. Totally different. Not really. He's useful in his own way, but he's such a unique kind of guy. Big, gigantic.
He's the spiritual successor to Mo Alley Cox.
It's so
that's what Jelani Woods is.
And then Kylan Granson's a nice role player. No one's going to get more use out of Kylan Granson than Shane Steichen. That is like his perfect little like utility knife. Like he loves Kylan Granson. I like Kylan Granson, but no one likes Kylan Granson more than Shane Steichen. Having said that, that's where I could see if they want to upgrade pass catcher. If they want to get a needle mover, Pittman is a nice player, good player, but another true needle mover. We'll see with Dobbs and everything once AR comes back. Dobbs is nice. He had nice flashes, but again, he's a slot only type. And then maybe D-line, but then it's kind of, again, we're kind of got not perfect fit here. Chop Robinson's a bit too rich for me. Ballard is a big traits guy, big numbers guy. So then that takes off Latu because Latu ran Latu from UCLA, ran a great 40. His other numbers are not great. That's why I keep calling him like an iffy athlete, even though everyone keeps yelling at me. And I don't think they go Byron Murphy because of Buckner and Stewart, because of the investments they have there. So that was kind of, I've gone back to corner is the one that kind of is most glaring for me and the one I see the easiest pathway to.
So I think this is the right way to bucket these. Corner is by far, I think, number one when you look at the current players on the roster. There is a need right now, today, for a starting level corner. There's a reason they were sniffing around L'Jarius Sneed as part of that process because they need a needle mover at that position opposite Juju Brents with Kenny Moore in the slot. Like number one, I think that if you were tiering them, corners at the top, and then I think you take a step down. And I think the way you're talking about this is exactly right because all the other spots that you would list off, it's not glaring when you look at the depth chart. Let's start at receiver. Michael Pittman is a guy that they just paid. Alec Pierce is a role player that I think they believe can be better with a full season of Anthony Richardson. And Josh Downs was good in the slot last year. You look at edge rusher. Okay. They have Kwity Paye. They have Dio. They have Ebukam. But I think with both of those groups specifically, and I think you could throw a tight end in there as well with Granson and Mo Alley Cox and all the guys, Jelani Woods. Those are all number twos.
Yes.
At every single one of these position groups, these are number twos, or in Pittman's case, maybe a 1B. Yeah. Okay. They were sniffing around Daniel Hunter in free agency. If there are upgrades at these positions, they will chase them. This entire roster, I think, is full of these kind of guys. This has been the case with the Colts for years.
I was waiting for you. That's exactly what I was going to joke. I was like, this is the B+ Colts. This is always what they do.
Players, but they need needle movers. And I think wide receiver and edge are two positions where, okay, let's see if we can find a needle mover. And if one of those guys, whether it's Jared Verse, I know you don't love him, but if they think that one of these edges in the first round is a difference maker for the long term, I think they'll take one even with some of the guys they have on the roster, because then Ebukam becomes your 3, Kwity Paye becomes your 2. It all kind of makes sense a little bit more, which is what the Hunter signing would have been. Receiver, I think, is similar. If they think Brian Thomas is like a dude and they can drop Brian Thomas in here next to Pittman and Downs, I think they would do it. And if Bowers is on the board for them at 15, I think they run up. I think they
really
run
like
up.
That. Yeah. I even had that passing thought about that. I swear until I did Mina show and I told her that. I was like, I hadn't even thought about that, but that makes a lot more sense as I've gone through this now. Especially just like you said, they don't want to block Pierce, but you also want to be realistic about it. Like, all right, well, you don't want to invest too much time in him. Is he an MVS or what are we getting out of him? Like, that's what you're trying to figure out. But you don't want to just go like, well, we're going to keep Pierce on here. And we don't need Bowers because we have Pierce. So I'm just talking pass catchers or anything like that. So
I don't think that'll be the thought process
at all. But that's why I got to also, I was talking about, I shouldn't say Bowers. I should say Brian Thomas or A.D. Mitchell or anything like that, outside only receiver. But then you get to Bowers and it's like, well, that makes a ton of sense for their makeup and what Steichen likes to use. He loves using tight ends. So yeah, that makes a lot more sense as I've gone through this. And the first thing is the one D lineman that makes sense in this range. This is where I think his range should start. I like him more in the early 20s, but he's different than Chop Robinson. He's different than Latu versus that pocket pusher, that strength, power to speed kind of guy. Speed to power kind of guy, power to speed. Oh my God. Every defensive line coach is going to slit my throat. Every speed to power type of guy. He is that type and he tested fairly well. He's got some good traits and he's got some leadership stuff too. So I don't think he's a true needle mover, but I do think he's a good player that might have some more to him. So he's the one guy that makes sense for what they like. But again, you got to talk range and stuff like that. But that receiver kind of discussion is what I've just gone back to. It's like, you're kind of in a good spot here to invest in a true guy that could be a dude. And there's a couple guys that might be there if they like him. So that one's my two, I would say, of their needs, but that makes more sense.
And I think that they're in a spot where that's the right mindset. Where it's like, we're okay. If we had to play a game today, we'd be all right. But we understand that we need upgrades. I think that's true for pass catcher. I think that's true for edge. Your Latu thing, is this just based on the jumps? He's not explosive. So like if you look at the movement numbers, right? Like his shuttle, his 3-cone, those are all like 80th, 85th percentile. Mm-hmm. His vertical was only 32 inches and his broad jump was about 9.5 feet. So those are more middling if you look at like the RAS and things like that. But even those, I think, and the way he moved was probably better than some people might have expected coming into this process, right?
Well, the 40 was good.
This is me like just purely like outside draft moron asking questions.
No, it's fine. Those jumps are, he didn't do the 3-cone, which is what I like to see with pass rushers. I like to see if they're under 7.2.
I think he might have done it somewhere along the way.
Okay. At the combine,
he did it at his pro day. And so his 3-cone was 7.09 and his short shuttle was 4.34. And Dane was tweeting about it. Those are both good numbers for a 267-pound guy.
Those are good. And then it's the broad. So this is where I come back, is that he is so incredibly skilled. Like has the best hand usage if you watch. Is he maxed out?
I'm intrigued by him. So you think he's maxed out and that's a problem?
That's why I'm more comfortable with him in the 20s than pick 12. It's just that what else are we tapping into here with medical history? Deep spine stuff, neck stuff. I shouldn't say spine stuff, neck stuff, which is scary.
The last guy I can remember who had neck stuff coming into the draft and was a first-round pick was Leighton Vander Esch. He just retired 5 years into his career, 4 years into his career because of those neck issues. So that's stuff that it's, really want to mess with. But Jaden Phillips was a guy, I think, who had some big-time neck and back problems that ended up becoming okay. But he was like a hyper athlete. Correct. In the way that Latu probably is not.
And elite size. And so that's where my concerns come, is that I do think he's a good player. It's just I don't think he's a blue chip guy. I like him more as a nice, really good number 2 pass rusher if you have another dude in there. Ideally, the broad number, the threshold, I'm going to give away some little secrets here, but the broad number I always look at is 9'9", 9'9". That is kind of the threshold. 7.2 3-cone, 9.9 broad. Those are really good thresholds to get true set guys. Max Crosby. So you can find a lot like kind of some mid-round guys that maybe will overperform, like a Max Crosby, like a Danielle Hunter, because of those numbers. But that's what he doesn't. When they don't meet those, it's like I get a little scared when I'm talking top 20. Not everyone's made him. I think Bosa was like an inch short on his broad or something like that, just barely missed. But then you watch Bosa's film and his length and all that stuff. And it's like, that's why I'm a little bit more, I like that a little bit more. Joey Bosa, I should say. But yeah, that's why I have more concerns with him. But I do think there's a role for him. It's just certain areas are a little too rich for me. But if you get to 26, you go to the Cardinals or something like that, where they have some other stuff, the Lions, something like that, a little later in the first, I'm way more comfortable with that. but that's just me.
I want to watch him a little bit more. I think I might be pumping him up because the first game I watched of his was the USC game where he was just like dominating the entire game. And I think a lot of people have watched that game. But for me, I think that even in the clips that I've seen and the stretches that I've seen of him, he is super skilled. And I'm thinking about pass rusher for my team in that range. Like if they were to pick at 9 or trade down, is he somebody that might be worth it playing next to Montez Sweat? So he's just a name that's been on my mind. And I know you don't love him as much as other people do.
Bears
so
fit's great.
Interrogate that a little bit.
Yeah, no, the Bears fit's nice. I've just seen him, and again, I just think there's how much are we tapping into here? So that's where I just have some of my curves. The USC game is the one that I think everyone has noticed. Watch him. The good game to watch, I think, with him is Arizona because he goes against Jordan Morgan, and I think they go back and forth a little bit. And Morgan is a good matchup for him because Morgan's more of a finessey guy at tackle. So that one was a really good matchup, and I think Morgan won it. Actually, that. Talk about games that stand out that make you hype a guy up. That might be my Morgan game where I'm like, hey, he was blocking the crap out of Latu. That's why, but I've watched a few more. But I'm glad you asked me about it because I haven't really dove into it. And I know I kind of keep keeping them down. It's just that I think I have more concerns because of where his ceiling might be.
The ceiling makes total sense, but he's one of those guys that everything I've seen and then some of the metrics and the pass rushing metrics, I'm just like, things are pointing to me liking this guy more than people I respect tend to. So that he was just one that I wanted to dig into a little bit more. And we're going to do a whole show about defensive players here over the next couple of weeks. So we'll be talking about him. And I think all the other pass rushers a little bit more in depth than we have up to this point. 2 spots I would throw out just depth wise, just worth mentioning for somewhere along the way in the draft here. Interior offensive line, Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, both free agents after this season.
Yep.
Ryan Kelly getting older. So that's one spot to look at. And I don't think Nick Cross or Rodney Thomas would prevent this team from drafting a safety in the first couple of rounds. So just depth at those spots, I think are worth mentioning as we get round 2, 3, 4.
Rodney Thomas will never. I like Rodney Thomas. I think you know that too, but that will never, ever, that name will never break my brain or leave my brain because the first time I ever talked about him, remember what happened? It was like, I think a Thursday night game and he got dunked on like for a touchdown or something like that. It was like literally bring him up for the first time ever. I'm like, I really like him. Make sure to check him out tonight, guys. Like when you're watching Thursday night football, watch him tonight. And he like had like a PI and then gets dunked on. Like I think they're playing like the Broncos or something. And I was just like,
I mean, he's like I never mentioned round pick that was like a spot starter. There's nothing wrong with being, be a little bit excited about it.
The fact that he can start, the fact that he can start is good. No, but I just will never. That's a name. It's just one of those guys. It's like, why did I say anything?
Let's get to the New Orleans at 14 here. Just the team that we could spend 6 hours talking about them and the roster construction and where they're at right now. I think my number one need, and I don't know how you feel about this, but based on what has come out over the last couple of weeks and where things currently stand, if Ryan Ramczyk is not going to be able to play this season because of what's going on with his knee, it seems like it's a degenerative condition that is just doesn't have any sort of solution on the horizon. I think you can make an argument that with that and the Penning situation at left tackle, that offensive tackle was the biggest need that the New Orleans Saints currently have right now.
That's it. Oh, I said literally first line. O-line to me is their biggest need. Trevor Penning experiment totally soured. Andres Pete is a free agent. I learned that Pete's little brother is like I think a top basketball guy or something like that. But Ryan Ramczyk, like you said, might retire. James Hurst, fine player. You're not building your team around James Hurst. It's like to me, and especially with this draft, especially where they're sitting at 14, they are in a prime position to add to this offensive line with Sean Payton, which we'll talk about him in a second. And post Sean Payton, they've invested in offensive line. Even Trevor Penning was a first round pick. So
McCoy was a second round pick, I think. I mean, they've spent Andres Pete was a first round pick. They've spent a lot of high end draft.
Oh no, I got the I was waiting for the Broncos discussion, but I got them all. Oh yeah, Andres Pete, Cesar Ruiz, Steven's brother, Ryan Ramczyk, all first rounders, and then Eric McCoy second. Armstead was in the third. That was such a home run by them. But that they're going to
Arkansas Pine Bluff will do that.
Oh yeah. His Senior Bowl.
Is that right? It's Arkansas Pine Bluff?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
The Senior, I actually went to that Senior Bowl and I remember the noises people made when he was in one-on-ones. That's like, so I swear, because it was like his footwork's like, it might have just been my dad sitting next to me, but it was somebody was making noise and going, oh, like, because he was just, I swear to God, that's not made up because it's just sets were so fast. But yeah, they'll invest in that position. I think they need to invest in that position. We saw what happened last year, and Derek Carr, they're investing in Derek Carr. He melts with pressure. A lot of quarterbacks do, but he is especially
shore up that entire position group. I think that's the number one place to start, somewhere along the offensive line. That was easy for me.
Yeah. Very
The
easy.
ones after that were harder for me. Which other positions came to mind quickly for you after you moved past the offensive line with the Saints' needs?
I said weirdly edge, even though they signed Chase Young. It's because this is a prove it deal. So it's Cam Jordan's 35 this year, which again, he's my age. So of course, on his way to Hall of Fame, but his best ball's behind him. You could see it kind of tailing off last year a little bit. I think he really's got one more good
Which
year
is
in him.
normal.
He's
It is
35.
normal for a
And he plays-
35-year-old to not have the same impact as
and
an
he's
edge
like
rusher.
barely freaking missed time either. Like he plays so many snaps. Yeah, just a legend of a player. But who else? Carl Granderson just signed the deal. He's always had off-field stuff, and then he signs the deal, and as soon as he signed the deal, his play
he tailed
tanked.
off last year.
And that was kind of disappointing because he was playing so well in that first month of the season.
We talked about it. I mean, we dug into the Saints defense early last year, and he was a guy that was just jumping off the screen.
Oh my God. I'm looking at Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan has played 16 or more games every single season of his career. He's played 800 snaps or more every season of his career until the last two, where he played 790 and then 770. It's just a ridiculous career. But
you would assume that number should have been lower based on the amount of draft capital they've spent early on defensive ends. Peyton Turner, Marcus Davenport, Isaiah Foskey, none of them have been able to keep Cam Jordan off the field, even if that was probably part of the plan.
That was it.
When they invested in all those guys.
Succession plan like 5 times. And they're like, he's just outplaying them all still. So
it's a tough situation to be there, though, where those 3 guys, obviously Marcus Davenport's not on the roster anymore, but Peyton Turner and Foskey still are, and they still signed Chase Young, and you could make an argument that they probably still need help at edge and then along the rest of the offensive line. Nathan Shepard and Kalen Saunders are both on the roster for 2025, but those are guys that are just guys. I mean, if you wanted to improve on that with per se from last year, I mean, you can make an argument for a lot of positions on defense, I think.
Yeah. But the guy, and I think why the edge discussion for me was like, oh, okay, is Jared Verse is a perfect Saints fit. Like you couldn't get a better edge fit for the Saints than him.
Big physical
pocket pusher. They would love that type. So it's a little high to me, but I mean, again, this is where I think his range does start though. So that if they did want to go down that path, that's where I could see it. They do have a defensive head coach, even a defensive first head coach. So, you never know what happens in those meetings, even though I think the offensive line is glaring, circled, sharpied, starred, highlighted, big spotlight on it. I think everybody could see that.
I'm with you. I think safety is a position worth throwing out. They moved on from Marcus May this offseason, so somebody to drop in there next to Tyrann Mathieu, and even Tyrann Mathieu's obviously getting much, much older. Corner, probably a consideration. Paulson Adebo's in the final year of his deal. They've always really bolstered depth there. They always have 1 or 2 more corners than they need, and I think the current state of that room, they're no longer in that position. Honestly, I think you could make an argument for most positions as maybe not needs, but spots where like, oh, they could add here. Like wide receiver, oh, they could add here. Tight end, they could add here. Defensive line, oh, they could add here. Corner, safety, they could add here. That's kind of how I feel about the current state of the Saints roster, period.
Yeah. I mean, even looking at it, even like running back, it's like, all right, how many years are you getting with Kamara? Like, it's
they
just
drafted Kendra Miller in the 3rd round last year, but
barely. I couldn't even get him on the field. And then they invested in Jamal Williams. I know it's just, I like the Tyrann Mathieu one. It's that the Saints moved on from him 2 years ago because they're like, yeah, we can't do this anymore. And the Saints are like re-upping him. And that's just,
the Chiefs moved on from him.
That's the Saints again. Yeah. I was like, why'd that sound weird? Yeah. The Chiefs moved on from a couple of years ago and the Saints are like, yeah, let's keep them going. Let's keep that going. So that's where they're at. That's where they're at right now in 2024.
Here's part of the problem when you're a team that probably could use some reinforcements at most position groups. The Saints have 2 picks in the first 4 rounds this year. The one they have in the 2nd round isn't theirs. It's one of the picks they got from the Sean Payton trade last year. So they got the Broncos 2, and then they gave their 3 to Denver as part of that deal. So if you're trying to, one of my favorite games, I tweeted this today. One of my favorite games every year is let's do a scavenger hunt to find out why the Saints have none of their picks. Like, why don't they just have any picks? So their 2nd this year went to Philadelphia in the Trevor Penning deal. So they lost their 2nd round pick this year, and they still need a tackle after what they did for Trevor Penning last year. Their 3rd goes to Denver in the Sean Payton swap for they get a 2, give up a 3. Their 4th, we talked about this earlier, went to Jacksonville in a trade for Jay Kaner last year.
And I totally forgot about that.
It is remarkable that you open it up every single year, whether it's Tankathon or pro sports transaction, whatever your draft pick finder of choice happens to be, and trying to figure out why the Saints have 3 fewer picks than every other team in the NFL. It's one of my favorite annual pastimes around this point of the year.
I love that they have 4 5th-round picks, 3 comp picks.
They have 5th-round comp picks. They got one for Davenport, and they got the couple other guys that signed, pretty decent contracts last year. So they got a bunch of 5ths. Which is nice, I guess. But they don't have a 3rd or a 4th.
How many 5th rounders they even have on the roster? Okay, Jordan Howell. Oh man, it just always looks so funny because it just goes, when it all gets listed off. Even like the Bears one always looks funny because it's like first, like gap. Like here, that's what this one always is funny. It's like first, second, gap, and then it's just fifth. I think Charles McDonald said that he's like, I think this is my Madden strategy. They do a lot of Madden-esque
strategies in the real world. And the Bears don't have picks this year, but they had extra seconds last year, and they got extra picks next year. The Saints is an annual thing. It is an annual thing where they're just
Montez Sweat with the second.
They're just missing picks every single year. So I always enjoy that process. All right, let's get to the Raiders at 13 here. Where did you kick off your team needs for the Las Vegas Raiders?
I stare at their depth chart and I see DJ Fluker's name penciled in as their starting right guard.
It's 2024.
In 2024. And I had to make sure. I was like, that DJ Fluker, right? That guy? I don't think he's been on a roster in 2 years? Yeah. So line. That was it. It didn't get past that. It was just offensive line. And I think, again, pull the string. They're set up in a perfect position to take whatever flavor they want at the offensive line, but they're in a decent position to kind of pick whatever guy they want. Colton Miller's turned into a really nice left tackle. And I think you already mentioned Thayer Munford a little bit. That's like, he's okay.
Like he started for half the season last year,
but he's okay. But it's not like it's like he was, oh my God, like you can't play this guy. It's like, okay, but it doesn't preclude you from upgrading from a 7th rounder, especially with the guys that are given here. But other than that, like a quarterback, if they want to get frisky, but then if you don't really, you're not in kind of that range, you're getting kind of moved up from that. And then cornerback would be the other one. And again, we can talk about in a second, but I don't know if that is necessarily like a glaring need, considering the defensive coordinator and Patrick Graham and what he has with corner. He can make different types work there. So it's not as much of a need as maybe a guy that wants to really match his guys up on the outside and have them go man to man or match.
I think that's fair, but I still think they have a pretty huge need an outside corner. I mean, what Jack Jones gave them last year after signing midseason was remarkable. And so if he can continue to play at that level, that is a huge win for them. Nate Hobbs is a nice slot corner, but they need another outside corner as part of this equation. So I think for me, it's between offensive line and outside corner, because we had the same process with the DJ Fluker realization. And then if you're fine with Munford at right tackle, then you need a right guard. If you're not fine with Munford at right tackle, then you need a right guard and a right tackle. So somewhere along the way, you need a starting offensive lineman, and you're in range to find one in this class. Corner to me is next. If you want to draft Terrion Arnold or Quinyon Mitchell, whoever the best corner in the draft is that falls into this spot, or the top corner in the draft, you could get him with the 13th overall pick in this class specifically. And I think that sets up well for the Raiders. And the third one I had was quarterback. And we have not talked about this at all. What is the plan? Like, where do they find a guy? How aggressive are they in finding a guy? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, they signed Gardner Minshew to the most bridge quarterback contract you could possibly sign a guy to. So somewhere along the way, whether it's in the first round this year, whether it's in the second round this year, they're the exception. Among all these teams in this range, they have a 2. So if they wanted to wait, they could be positioned to get one of those second wave quarterbacks in a way that some of the other teams in this general vicinity are not. Is that their plan? Do they want to be more aggressive than that? Are they kind of one of those teams that could surprise us? We're sitting there on draft night. The Patriots are on the clock at 3. We're all just assuming that the Vikings are going to be the team that goes up and gets it, and boom, it's the Raiders. Or it's at 4 and boom, it's the Raiders. I could see that, but we really have no sense of why they would take whatever path is available to them.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like they played Aiden O'Connell so many games last year. They signed Gardner Minshew. I've heard through the grapevine they like Penix, and I did our quarterback preview, and it was what Dane and I talk about him like a late day 2 guy, a mid day 2 guy. That's being nice. And so to me, it's like, are they talking about liking him in the first round, liking him, or are they talking about him day 2 liking him? So that was one name I've heard maybe associated with them, but I don't know. For me, it's like that if you can't get really the top 2, or if you're including Daniels and McCarthy as well, any of those top 4 guys, just go with this placeholder stuff. This should be technically year 1 of this quote unquote regime. The problem is you got Devontae Adams sitting out there. You got guys like that. You got pros like that. That's like, you got to keep him happy.
It's hard to figure them out, man.
Hard.
I just don't know. I don't know what the timeline is. I don't know what they want to be, because I think that's exactly right. I had the same thought when I was looking at, all right, well, they could wait, but that doesn't seem to be where they are right now. They spent a shitload on Christian Wilkins. They got Devontae Adams in the building. Like, what is the timeline, and how quickly do they want to drop a quarterback into that timeline? I truly don't know.
I don't either. And I don't know, like Antonio Pierce's long-term team building philosophy. I know that guy get his players going, though. He's a good quote.
He certainly is.
Shouldn't be a shocker to anybody who's met Antonio Pierce, but yeah.
So my only thing about this, my only like punchline thing about Antonio Pierce at this point, after this offseason, we've had a couple months, we've had free agency, we've had a couple different things for him to react to, hiring cycles. So I think it was Minshew and Luke Getsy. His reasoning for why they hired Luke Getsy and why they signed Gardner Minshew, for both guys, it was, well, they killed us. That's my only bit of pause here, is that like I need a tiny bit more for why these are your answers at some of the most important hirings and signings you can make in the NFL, other than, well, when we played against them last year, he did real good.
Oh no, that's such a coach answer too, by the way.
I'm mostly joking. Like it's probably fine, but the fact that was his answer for why they hired their offensive coordinator and why they signed their quarterback is very funny to me.
Yeah, so the Timberwolves, I was a Sonics fan, then they moved, so I became a Timberwolves fan. They Kevin McHale used to be always a victim of that. He was the GM for a while there. Signed Joe Smith under a table deal, cost him like 5 first-round picks. But anyways, he always would sign guys that were the guys that killed the Wolves the year before. It was like a lock that they would sign for overpay them for some mid-tier guy, all this stuff. It was like the number one thing. And the only pro team I can think of that does that right now is Trent Baalke. Loves that shit. Loves signing the guys that killed him the previous year. Look at Christian Kirk's and Gabe Davis's receiving totals and see who they had their best games against. Jacksonville Jaguars. Williams, what's his face? Darius Williams. His best game when he was with the Rams, going against the Jaguars. Yep. Yeah. So that's kind of his team building philosophy too. And we always speak about him in high praises.
That's right. Big fan of what they've done here on the Athletic Football Show. So let me throw out a scenario for you here. Yeah. I'm curious how you feel about this. All right. So looking at the Raiders picks and who might be available, let's say they take Fashanu with a 13th overall pick. Okay. Whatever. If he's there, let's say they take Penix at 44.
Okay.
Are you okay with that plan if you're the Raiders?
Yeah, because they got the lineman in the first round. But I like that way better than taking Penix in the first. And it's a dart. You're throwing darts right now, trying to figure it out. We have no real long-term solution here. All right, let's get 3 guys. We got Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, and Penix. And then you have to move on from him if he's a nothing. Okay, it is what it is. But I mean, it's some dart throw answer that you can maybe find a guy. It's just, I just don't want him in the first round. Like, I think that's way too rich. But again, if you think you're comfortable with him in the second, he falls to the second, whatever. It's a dart throw, and maybe you can find that answer.
It's funny. I've been trying to figure out what quarterback class this year reminds me of. And there are shades a little bit of the 2011 quarterback class, right? Where you had the guy that was the Cam year. So you had the guy at the top that was like that top guy. And there are 2 of them this year, kind of the way that you see it with Caleb.
I thought you were about to compare Drake May to Blaine Gabbert. After he just got called Brock Osweiler by Dane last week.
But there are a couple guys, like let's say like Jaden Daniels and JJ McCarthy are kind of in the Blaine Gabbert, Christian Ponder kind of thing, where they're probably like top 10 to 15 picks, but maybe in this year's class they get pushed up. But then in the 2011 draft specifically, Andy Dalton and Colin Kaepernick went with the 35th and 36th picks in the draft. And we just don't really see quarterbacks drafted in that range anymore, because typically teams just come up and go get the guy if they want one in the back half. I guess Levis was an exception last year, but if you're picking a guy at 44, It's just different than if you have to trade up for him in the first round or pick him with the 13th overall pick. So with the Raiders specifically, if that's how the draft fell for them because they just can't get up that far and they need a quarterback somewhere along the way, I think I'd probably be okay with that set of outcomes for them specifically.
Dalton is a funny name to bring up because that is like kind of the tier I would maybe view McCarthy in as maybe as like upside and everything, but it's like he went pick 35, not pick 5 or 4, and that's why I have kind of troubles with this conversation about him. But like that's the thing is like
it's
Dalton,
a different world.
It's a totally different world.
It was a different world. It was
and translating.
CBA,
the
CBA hadn't come into play yet, so I think people didn't really understand like the value of rookie quarterback contracts and like when
this was during that negotiations of that, right? Yeah,
it was the first year. So because it was the lockout. So
lock happened till summer. Yeah.
This was really the last draft before like the modern way of thinking about rookie quarterback contracts where you draft a guy, because I think that's part of the reason. Like the reason that JJ McCarthy is the 4th pick and not the 35th pick is because not just teams needing quarterbacks, but teams really wanting quarterbacks on rookie contracts. So the thirst for that, I think, is driving, some of the predictions about how high a couple of these guys could go. But, if the Raiders are an exception because there aren't as many teams looking for that second wave and a couple of these guys can fall into the second round, does that actually break well for them?
Yeah. Then there's the other side of the argument. It's like, do you want to invest that much in a guy you don't know about? Even if it is $9 million relative to guaranteeing all the money in the old CBA, that I'm just saying the trade-off of all that is like it is a unknown quantity that you're investing in.
Oh, you're talking about trading up for a guy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you're taking away.
That's kind of what I mean. Like if you're the Vikings, right? And you have, and it is JJ McCarthy. Let's just say for argument's sake, it is JJ McCarthy at 4. You're trading 3 first-round picks, or you're using 3 first-round picks on JJ McCarthy. Is there an argument that if it's not going to be one of the top guys, it's better to just wait till 44 and take whoever happens to be there? I don't know. I see it both ways, but I think that's the situation we're looking at for teams in this range, because only one of them is going to be able to move up and get whoever the 4th guy happens to be. If quarterbacks do go 1, 2, 3.
And it's all about commitment to a guy. If they really like a guy, that's why the Chiefs moved up for Mahomes. They were like, hell yeah, that's our guy. We're doing hell or high water. We're moving up to that spot to take him. A team just has to fall in love with one guy. The Raiders could just fall in love with Penix and go, yeah, that's our guy. We're staying pat. We're staying pat right here and taking him. You don't know. Like maybe the Broncos like somebody and they want to move up for that guy. You just don't know how these guys actually view these guys like that. I mean, shoot, just even me and Dane talking, anyone you see on Twitter breaking guys down, YouTube, insert backup quarterback here. Like they break these guys down and like they talk about them. Oh, I prefer this guy. I prefer this guy. That's how every team and every room is. And Jane and I talk about this all the time. There's some of these quarterbacks will have 9, 10 evaluations just from one team. So now that's so many different opinions. So many guys get stacked differently. So head coach and the GM also just fall in love with the guy. That's how guys get driven up draft boards and driven up on the picks. Right? And the owner. Yes, which is the big one too. And especially with the Raiders, you do have to take that in consideration more than other teams. Yes, the owner is big with the Raiders.
Let's get to the Denver Broncos at 12. This is the weirdest team in the NFL to me.
The funniest.
I do not understand the Denver Broncos. I look at the depth chart. I look at the draft capital that they have. I look at their cap situation. I just don't understand them at all. If it were me and I'm looking at this team, and even there are some nuggets that I think could push you in this direction, like them choosing to take on the bigger half of Russ's dead cap hit this year and the smaller next year. So they decided to flip it and take on the $50 million chunk this year and the $30 million chunk next year, which that's fine. You're not doing anything this year anyway. So I actually think that's kind of smart. My thought is just punt on the year. Just punt.
Yes.
You sign Ryan Tannehill to whatever contract Ryan Tannehill wants, and you say, all right, we're building this thing for 2025. Even with Russ taking up $35 million in cap space, we have $80 million in cap space next year. We have a lot of flexibility. We can move on from some guys, and then next year will be the year that we end up trying to take a shot and go find our guy at quarterback and really push this thing forward. In a vacuum, that's what I would say. You think Sean Payton's going to punt on a football season at this stage in his career?
Nope.
Probably not.
Nope.
So I don't know. I don't know why they would go one direction or another. I don't know if they have the assets to go be aggressive at quarterback. They don't have a second round pick because of the Sean Payton trade. They don't have a third round pick theirs because of the Riley Moss trade. Think about what they've done over the last 2 years. This team has made one pick. If they stick at 12 this year and pick, it will be the only pick they have made in the top 50 in the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Because of the Russ trade and the Sean Payton trade.
Yeah.
So even independent of the ammo they have to move, there are no young draft picks on this team. The guys they did pick, they traded up for. So they gave up picks to go get Marvin Mims, and they gave up picks to go get Riley Moss. So are they in a spot again to trade away draft capital this year or next to go pick a quarterback when they already don't have any young cost control talent on the team? I do not know what to do with them. I have no idea. And this isn't even a criticism. It's more so just like Lucille Bluth at the table being like, I don't understand the question. I won't respond to it. Like, that's how I feel about the Broncos right now.
This is what happens when you splurge on a quarterback and splurge on a head coach, but not just money wise, asset wise. This isn't just money or capital or anything. This is picks, using picks to get these guys. Quarterback they've already moved on from, might be the backup in Pittsburgh this year. I know people are begging for them to take a QB. I don't see the avenues for it. Just as all that, what you just said, I just do not see the avenues for them to move up because of the assets they have. And I know from what I heard, Peyton likes May, and I don't see him liking Bo Nix, even if guys are matching it up like, oh, well, that's the fifth guy. Well, Sean Payton's going to love him. Oh, because he's great in quick game. And that's what Drew Brees was so good at. Drew Brees was a monster over the middle and launched that shit down the field on play action as well, guys. And so straining right there, I just seeing what Peyton likes. Nix is not that type of guy. That's not how Nix plays. We're talking day 2. Sure, we just went over.
They don't have any fucking picks.
Exactly. So I don't see them doing that. I think they gave Stidham a decent deal last year. So I don't know. I don't know. I think Stidham's the guy there. Just for this year, just a stopgap. I think they are building. They should be building, I should say, for 2026. But this is Sean Payton. And that's where it is so hard. I'm right there with you. This was exactly my notes. It's like, I don't know. I should say the smart thing to do is trade back. That's the smart thing to do. Move back, take the lineman, get some more mid-round picks this year and next year.
Okay.
How many times has Sean Payton moved back ever?
Last time the Saints traded back in the draft, Lou Johnson, who covers the Saints, was talking about this today when I was making my joke about the scavenger hunt with the picks. 2007 was the last time the Saints traded back in the draft.
Before the show, I was going pick or draft by draft. I got to 2010 and I hadn't found anyone. So 2007.
Then they traded up twice last year in his first draft as the football czar. He's the head coach, but he's in charge. We know this.
He's in charge of everything.
His first year, and he did a lot of the personnel stuff in New Orleans. So when Sean Payton has a say in all of this, trading back ain't part of the process, man.
Nope.
So when you consider his approach, his personality, the way they approached free agency last year, in a year where you could have easily made an argument that just take a deep breath for 1 year. Just take a breath. They went the exact opposite direction. So even as all of the evidence points to a certain prudency and maybe having some patience and taking a long view here, everything that we have seen, every ounce of evidence we have points in a different direction than that.
It does.
So I do not know what to make of them. I really don't.
No.
So it makes it hard to talk about needs and process and where they'll go because I can't get my arms around them even to get to that level of granularity.
Even last year's free agency, I remember just what you said. It made a lot of sense for them. Just, some singles and doubles, maybe get some Peyton guys in there if he wants to splurge on some old Saint players. All right, but we don't need to break the bank. You get all the stuff we got, see what we got with Russ and then move on to 2024 and see what we have. No, not Sean. He's splurge on McGlinchey, Powers, all these guys. But that brings me to this is the one spot I'm like, all right, we just talked about with the Saints. One spot Sean Payton is always drafted high is offensive line. And that's, again, talking about early teens is a perfect range. Don't want to do that whole thing again. But if they were building to build for the future, that would make a lot of sense to me as far as
Bowles is a free agent after this year.
Correct.
So Garrett Bowles is a free agent after this year. If they wanted to take a tackle of the future, they could do that. They have a needed center now with Lloyd Cushenberry moving on. So that's another spot where somewhere along the way, could they address that? O-line was one of the first things I said. To me, this is a Brock Bauer spot if they stick because they just need something, right? So if that's where they choose to go, their pass catching group is weird. It's Josh Reynolds, discount Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, who they've been trying to trade for 2 years. So if Bowers is there and they think he's the best player, that would make sense. And then I think you could make an argument for the defensive line. Browning has 26 career starts. He's a free agent after the season. DJ Jones is 30. He's a free agent after the season. My takeaway here is this is kind of a rebuilding team.
Yes.
Like you could make an argument for almost any single position group because that's where they are from a roster building standpoint. But that's the only thing about them that screams rebuild is what the state of the roster is, not how they operate, not the mindset, and not what they probably will end up doing. So that's why it's just hard for me to pin it down.
You just said, imagine you can see it, pick 3, pick 4, pick 5, and you see the Raider thing come up. You can see the Bronco thing come up. You see that logo come up, and we all look at each other like, oh, I could easily
find
see
the pick somewhere.
Even if it doesn't make any sense of what they're using or what they'll find something. They're going to find a new credit card to charge. That is what they will do. They'll take out a new line of credit. They'll change their name and find an alias. But other defense player, like you said, I can see them taking another corner. So with Patrick Surtain and Jake McMillan in the slot. Yeah. Defensive lineman edge might be a little richer. Yeah. Everything. Yeah, that's why I just defer to offensive line or moving back. It's like that's what I would do in their situation. But again, Sean Payton is such a wild card. He'll always be a wild card with this stuff.
Yeah, they should have had an extra third because of the Riley Moss trade and the Sean Payton trade, but they traded that. They lost the extra third because of the Riley Moss deal. They do have an extra. They do have a fourth. They don't have their fourth, but they have a fourth because of the Bradley Chubb trade. This is another team where it's just like you open the list of picks and it's like, what is happening here? I need I need a roadmap. I need some sort of chart to actually get from point A to point B here.
Someone did that for the Eric Lindros trade going for hockey here. And he was like, Eli Manning'd it when he got drafted and was like, oh, I'm not going to play here. And so good trade to the Flyers. There is a map of what the picks, the assets that got traded for him. It's insane what it turned into. I got to find it somewhere. Someone replied to it because I made a joke about Lindros the other day. And so I got to find it, but it was just, Quebec City ended up turning into a Colorado Avalanche and winning everything. So it's like, but I that's burned in my head. It's like what that one little trade can turn into for an entire franchise.
The takeaway here is the Broncos have 2 picks in the top 100, 1 pick in the top 75. Again, that's what really matters here as we're thinking about how they're going to approach this draft and what sort of ammunition they have to move around the draft and what sort of ammunition they have to potentially seek out a quarterback. This stretch of the draft we'll talk about Minnesota next week, but Minnesota, Denver, and the Raiders, those 3 teams and what they need to potentially do at quarterback. I am endlessly fascinated by how that's ultimately going to shake out, especially when you consider the spot that a couple of those teams are in because of the trades that have happened already.
It's funny. And then the second half or the first half of this show, I should say, all those other teams are such fun teams because it's like, what do you guys think?
Yeah.
What do you
How
think?
How are you going to get from point A to point B?
So
the Colts, I feel that way about the Colts. I feel that way about the Jags. I feel that way about the Bengals.
Seahawks.
Seahawks too. The Seahawks is more about
Seahawks is a grab bag. It's like, oh, okay. They honestly, this sounds bad. It's like, I don't see them missing here. It's kind of like they can kind of choose their adventure a little bit here. They kind of are a little different. So you're right.
They're more in reset mode to me than teams like the Jags, the Bengals, and the Colts are. Those are like, how are you going to push this thing over the top? The Seahawks, I'm more interested in because you're going to tell me something about it I don't know about you because it's a new regime. And I always appreciate that about the draft.
Yeah.
All right. That is all we've got for today. Just a quick heads up programming wise for the rest of this week. Our show with Dane is going to run on Friday this week, not on Thursday. Dane is finishing up The Beast. So we're pushing that show just one day. We're going to talk about the pass catchers on Friday. Very, very excited to dig into that. Our Thursday show this week is going to be me and my good buddy David Hellman from Fox Sports chatting about the teams that we think have the most at stake in this year's draft. I think we'll probably be talking about a couple of the teams that we mentioned today alongside a few others that really have to nail this year for one reason or another. So very excited about both of those. Please come back and check that out. And like we mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to be in Detroit this year for our live draft show coming to you on YouTube, live round 1 on Thursday. Me, Nate, Dane, fun guests, a lot of bells and whistles. So please be on the lookout for that. And we will also be doing round 2 and 3 on Friday. So same sort of schedule as last year. Hopefully just a tick up in the level of broadcast we could bring you guys. Yes, just really knocking that out this year. That for now is all we've got. As always, sincerely appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you soon.